With Visual Studio 2010, there are two ways to make ASP.NET web applications: Classic ASP.NET and ASP.NET MVC. ASP.NET MVC is a much more recent product designed to let traditional web developers develop websites at the HTML, CSS, JavaScript level, while at the same time taking advantage of the functionality provided to them by the ASP.NET framework. In this video, I'll show you how you can quickly set up an ASP.NET MVC website. So let's say we want to set up a quick website for our C# user group. Go ahead and start Visual Web Developer, say New Project, and ASP.NET MVC 2 web application. Let's call it User Group, or User Group 2, or User Group 3. We had some more projects called User Group. So you now have an ASP.NET MVC web application that you can run because it's a template. And if you look at it in the browser, you see that you have an introduction page, its home, and an about page. So to give you a jump start, I'm going to show you where you need to replace all of this text, and as well show you how to do some interactivity. For instance, creating a button on this page, which will display text on this page. And you'll see that it's a quite different approach than the ASP.NET or the classic ASP.NET way of doing it. So the first thing we'll do is change this text on this home page. Let's go ahead and close your browser and stop the execution. We are now in the home controller. And in the home controller, in controllers in general, you can define variables which you pass on down to the view. These are view data variables, and the view that we saw just a moment ago is defined on index, and here is the variable being displayed. So if we change this text here, we'll call it upcoming meetings, and we run it, we see that it has indeed changed because the controller is changing the variable, and that variable is being passed down to the view. So the view is basically HTML, so we can put anything in here that we could put in HTML, and it'll just appear. Next meeting is Thursday, 8 p.m. in the cafeteria. And if we run that, we see that the HTML simply appears, as we would expect. Now, if we were in classic ASP.NET, we would go into Design View and drag a button onto the designer and double-click it and create a click handler, and that would all be very straightforward. But we're in ASP.NET MVC, which was made for web developers who feel very comfortable down at the HTML, CSS, JavaScript level. And so we're going to implement a button here, which when clicked will execute some JavaScript by using the jQuery library, which will display a text on the page. So let's take this out and we'll put in a div. Notice the very nice HTML editing features, creating, closing elements, etc. in Visual Studio. And here we have a button, so let's call it button. We're going to be displaying the topic of the next meeting, so button topic, type button, value, display topic, and then we have a place to display the topic. We'll call it message. So since this is just HTML, we'll be able to run it and see the button, although it has no functionality yet. That's what we need to program in now. So we'll put a JavaScript block in here. Text JavaScript, yes. And we'll say when the document loads. And you see here we have IntelliSense, but it's not jQuery IntelliSense yet. Let me show you how to get that. You need to go into your site master shared site master. And in the head element, you need to copy in these script tags. This one loads jQuery from the scripts directory, which is already in there by default. And this one loads basically the IntelliSense that you need. So go ahead and make sure you save that. Go back into your index. And now when we type period here, we have jQuery IntelliSense, which is very nice. So we need to say here, when the document loads, we want to do this. And what we want to do is say change the message element, which is this right here, and change the text to the topic is going to be reactive extensions. So now when we run it, we have our button. Oh, it's already being displayed. That's because we have a little bug in our code here. What we really wanted to say was this. We have to tell the button topic that, and this here is the button's ID is button topic. So we need to say, when it is clicked, do this. And the thing that it should do is insert this text into the message element here. Before it was inserting it every time the page was loaded. So this should work now. We'll stop this, start it again, and we have a button with no text. We click the button and we still have no text. Let's see what is wrong here. Oh, there it is. We just aren't closing this parentheses and we don't have a semicolon. So you see, working down at the HTML level is a little bit more nerve-wracking, but in the end, it'll work. So now our button works. Let's try it again here. When we load the page, the message element has no text in it. When we click, it has text in it. So that's an example of a completely different way of programming interactivity in ASP.NET MVC than in classic ASP.NET. So what do we have left here before we have a functioning website for our C# user group? We can change the title up here. Let me show you where that is. It's not on the index page. It is in the site master here. So this is basically the main master page, which gets displayed for every view. And we'll call this C# user group. And if we run it, we see indeed that the title has changed on this page. And if we go to the About page, we also see that it is changed. Now let's change this content here. We're on the About page, and that in ASP.NET MVC is called a view. So we'll go to Views, Home, and here's About. And there it is. We code C#. And let's see if that got changed. We click on the About page, we do see our changed text. And just one other thing I wanted to show you is if you have a web developer background, you'll be asking, okay, this is all great. Where is the CSS file? And let me show you where that is. What we can do is we can give some styles to the button topic and the message here. So if we go up here under content, you'll see site CSS, and that should be very familiar to you if you are into web development, classic web development. We can go ahead and copy this in here, which are styles for the button info. It just puts a margin on the top And the same with the message, and changes the font size a bit so you can see that that has changed. So let's go ahead and run this again. And the style sheet is on every page. So when I click this, actually, sometimes you have to do refresh for it to take effect. That should work. Let me look in here again. In here, this is button info and message, which is correct. And we have on the site master, we are bringing in this file here, site CSS, which is great. So that should work. Let me see. Yes, it does work. What I was doing wrong is if you change the CSS file, depending on the cache, you have to sometimes press Control and reload for it to actually reload the CSS file. So that's actually a good example of the kind of messiness that you get in when you go with the ASP.NET MVC route. You are down at the level of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and have to deal with the browser as a technology, etc. If you're using classic ASP.NET, then that technology shields you from a lot of the web technology like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you already have skills in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, then ASP.NET MVC is the tool for you. If you come from a programming background, then you probably want to go with classic ASP.NET. But in general, many feel that in the future, new developers who are coming to ASP.NET will indeed choose ASP.NET MVC.